30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
Hi,
My name's JC McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and
Well,
you're
you're
watching
watching
AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. And All About You is one of two different programs that I have the pleasure of hosting and producing live every single week at AccessTV.org studio. All About You is a show that's designed to give you, the viewers, some background information related towards the particular guest's life story and career. And this morning on All About You, we have an amazing entertainer who has cross-range different decades, and he has worked with a multitude of A-list artists in particular areas of songwriting and other areas of the music industry. The guest this morning on All About You is no other than a songwriter, performer, entertainer, no other than Harold Payne. Good morning, Harold. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jonathan. I'm doing great. Nice to
Okay,
be here.
it's nice to have you, Harold. Harold, could you kind of let people know a little bit about your background, starting where you were born and raised?
Well, I was born and raised in a town called Gardena, California, which is part of the greater Los Angeles area. And it was good. It's in what we call the South Bay, um, not far from about 5 miles from the beach and kind of right next to Southwest Los Angeles.
Mm.
And it was a really a good neighborhood to grow up with, multi-ethnic neighborhood, um, all kinds of people from all over, a large Japanese American population as well. And so it's a nice place to grow up.
Okay. What were some of the things that you liked to do when you was growing up in Gardena, California?
Well, I played a lot of sports. In
Mm.
high school, I played football primarily, and 1 year of college. And when I got one too many knocks on the head, I decided to trade in my helmet for a guitar.
Mm.
That's kind of how I made the jump.
Was you a Los Angeles Rams fan, or Los Angeles Lakers fan, or Los Angeles Dodgers fan growing up in our
All of
Southern
the
Cal?
above.
All of them.
I'd say Dodgers the most because the Rams kind of came and went and came back, you know. So
Uh,
uh, I was uh, ever since the Dodgers came to Los Angeles, I was a huge fan. I actually went to opening day at Dodger Stadium. Ditched school when I was in junior high school, and went to that. So I really enjoyed watching, and I still um, am, I've gone to a fair amount of games and definitely a big Dodger fan most of all, and Lakers too, but um, mainly Dodgers.
Baseball, right. So you say you started playing the guitar at an early age. Was there any particular guitarist that you looked up to growing up, or that you liked to listen to in the musical background?
Well, the first instrument that I played was actually the ukulele, as they say in Hawaii, because I was 13 and or so, and there's only four strings and it's easy to play for small hands. And the kid next door had a guitar, and I learned a few chords on the guitar and kind of was off and running. I really liked um, everything from um, Harry Belafonte,
Mm-hmm.
you know, down the way where the nights are gay, and
Mm-hmm.
some of his stuff, and of course Daylight come and we want to go home, and all those, and folk music in the beginning, and then R&B was definitely kind of took over. But I was in a surf band, I was in a folk group, and kind of an R&B group, and the R&B group won out. We were doing mainly Motown stuff. Played a place in Gardena, in the town I grew up with, called Baby Huey, with a band called Rich Riley and the Tail Feathers.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
it kind of gives you an idea of the era that it was. And we did, Temptations, Four Tops, Smokey, Marvin Gaye, all that kind of stuff. So I grew up with a lot of that. And originally, there was Rich Riley was the lead singer, and I sang on a few songs. And um, sometimes, if his voice was a little hoarse, I would throw in, hit a note that he couldn't hit, or vice versa, if my voice was hoarse. And I started expanding my repertoire. And then one time he got sick and couldn't make it the gig. And much to my surprise, I was able to pull it off by myself, and to the surprise of everybody in the audience, because I'd been kind of, in a way, understudying. And so that that gave me the confidence to be able to start playing some solo gigs with just me and my guitar.
Now, Harold, you kind of have the balance. I mean, you can sing just as equally as you can play the guitar. Do you like one a little bit better than the other, or doesn't they both kind of simultaneously how you feel about
I, I, I
singing? And
like I like playing both at the same time.
okay.
I mean, I like songwriting, I like singing, and I like accompanying myself on the guitar.
Hmm.
And I'm not so much of a solo guitar player, instrumentally by itself. I do a few things like that, but mainly it's more accompanying myself, or if being part of a group.
Hmm.
And the group that I've been with for 40 years or so um, is how I got in touch with you, because Oliver Brown, who you interviewed, is my band member, bandmate for in the group Gravity. Started off as Gravity, then became Gravity 180.
Hmm.
So I have performed and still perform a lot solo, and Gravity is like a lifetime group. We haven't been playing quite as much, but we have a new project that we're working on too. So
Hmm.
it's a combination of all of that.
Well, Harold, most people probably will recognize you, obviously, with your guitar skills, but then your ability to do songwriting. And you mentioned some of the groups that you were fascinated with early on, and particularly the Motown R&B sound. Did you get a chance to meet any of these artists before you kind of became established as a, top of the notch songwriter?
Well, yeah, I met a lot of people. Um, I was invited to Barry Gordy's house with he and his sister
Mm-hmm.
Gwen, and they wanted to sign a publishing deal with me. And then they told me to invite all my friends and come over, and they had a big party for us. So I met some of the other artists there, writers, and you know, I've and then when I met Bobby Womack, uh, I really met a lot of more of the R&B artists. He was friends with the Temptations, and we'd go over their place, Melvin Franklin's place, and some of the other R&B acts, and then in England as well, because Bobby was really well known over there. So that's when my songwriting career really took off, is when I started working with Bobby.
Well, Harold, you just mentioned that you met Barry Gordy. So when you met Barry Gordy, was you kind of looking to sign a deal? Because usually when you hear Barry Gordy at that time, he's usually kind of looking to sign a particular act. So was this just a general meeting that you had with him, or
No,
was this like a
this
bit?
was it was mainly it was at his house, but it was hosted by his sister Gwen, who
Mm,
was a big part of of Motown, and it was really for a publishing deal, which I ended up not doing, but um, that's a long story.
Right.
But it was a little too, uh, at the time, all encompassing. Um, I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, you know. But it was a wonderful experience, and I actually met Bobby Womack's brother, Friendly Womack, when he was working at Motown
Mm-hmm.
at the time. And my brother Larry had a magazine called Where It's At magazine that was on the West Coast, and the first issue had the I believe the Jacksons on, at the time it was the Jackson Five on, and so we had some interface there with Motown, a lot of the business people there, um, and then over the years I've met a few of those folks, but um, my main connection was with Bobby,
Mm-hmm.
and once I started getting songs on his albums, and people would see that and contact me about possibly doing songs for other people, and that's kind of where my songwriting started to take off. And I the first song that I wrote with Bobby, well, how I met Bobby was, my brother Larry had this magazine, and he was up in San Francisco, and he was at the same hotel as Bobby, and he ran into Bobby and said, "Hey, my brother's a songwriter," and Bobby kind of, no doubt, rolled his eyes and said, "Oh yeah, another one of these." He had
Mm-hmm.
guys throwing cassettes into his car window to try to get him to listen to their songs,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but Larry uh, um, happened to have met Bobby's secretary a couple months before that, and had put a free ad in his magazine. And so when he told Bobby that, it kind of put me at the front of the line. So Bobby said, "I'll tell you what, if your brother's what you say he is, you tell him to come up here. I'm doing an album in San Francisco, and if I like what he's got, I'll give him a shot." So I flew up, took a night off of my gig, and flew up to San Francisco. And I had lyric sheets, I had cassettes, I had a reel-to-reel tape, and my guitar, and so that however he asked me to show my wares, as it were, I could have some way of letting him know what I do. So he said, "Let me see these lyrics." So he looked at the lyric sheet and he said, "These are pretty good. I like this. So I tell you what, you come on in the studio." It was a place called Wally Heider Studio, which was a very well-known studio. And he said, "We're cutting a couple tracks here, and I'll be home in a few days, and let's see what you come up with." They laid down a track. It was the Pointer Sisters, Herbie Hancock, and all these people. And of course, I tried to pretend like, "Oh yeah, I do this all the time,"
Mm-hmm.
and it was really one of my first times in a major studio. And so they laid down a couple tracks. I went home and wrote, the rest of the lyrics and a little bit of the music, and went over to Bobby's house. And the first song that we wrote together was a song called "Daylight," which was a big R&B hit for Bobby, and has since then been recorded by everyone from Leon Russell, um, to Carlos Santana, uh, and several other people. I'm drawing a blank on the girl that went, Beyonce's cousin in Destiny's Child.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Kelly
but
Rowland.
Kelly Rowland,
Yeah, yeah.
Kelly, yeah. Um, so she had a big hit in England with it about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the beginning of working with Bobby. And so I wrote with him off and on for, pretty much the rest of his life. He passed in 2014.
Mm.
So I started working with him in 1975. So it was quite a run.
Uh, Harold, you didn't write the song "If You Think You're Lonely Now" for Bobby Womack. I just want
No,
to.
I wish,
Okay.
but I wrote a lot of songs with Bobby. But on the Poet, it was a time where he was working with a particular group of people, and that I wasn't involved. He co-wrote that with a keyboard player. Um, it's an interesting story on that song. According to Bobby, his friend who played keyboard, whose name I'm drawing a blank on, beautiful cat, and he was on the phone talking. His girlfriend had been pestering Bobby to use him to play keyboards for him. So finally, Bobby said, "Okay, I'll try him out." And Bobby really liked him so much that he was in the studio all the time. And she called up and said, "Hey, how come, when are you coming home?" And kind of gave him a hard time. And he said, "Look, if you think you're lonely now,
Okay.
wait until tonight." And Bobby said, "Hey, that's a song." And they went right in and cut it.
Right. And that's where I guess the whole idea came from. I always wondered
Yeah,
about that song. Uh,
yeah.
Jodeci did a remake of that song, I think, for the movie Jason Lyrics, and actually I believe Bobby Womack was in the video towards the end. But Harold, when you're writing a song for a particular artist, do you have to collaborate and be with the artist at the same time, or do you just write the song and then you distribute it to the artist and let them look
It,
at it?
it's all different, and of course, in Bobby's case, a lot of the songs we wrote, he was the artist,
Mm-hmm.
so was writing with the artist.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes, uh, I didn't meet Patti LaBelle, for instance, until after uh, she did my song.
Mm-hmm.
She did a song of mine called "Body Language." The guy I wrote it with, Pete Luboff, happened to have a meeting with the Philly soul guy songwriters songwriting production team,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they really liked the song, and that's really how it happened. Later on, another guy I met produced a live show, a live uh, called Body Language, and Body Language was the title of it, and it was the title song of the album, and that's when I met Patty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, I also met her at one of her concerts backstage. And it was funny because a friend of mine had tickets, really good tickets, and we went backstage, and she was the one that had the tickets. But we were talking to her, and and my friend said, "Yeah, Harold wrote it. I wish you didn't trust me so much."
Mm-hmm.
She said, "You wrote that," and And so I pulled out, I had a cassette in my pocket and pulled it out and gave it to her of a song that I was pitching to her. And my friend, well, hey, I had the tickets and you're the one that pitched her the song. She was kind of amused by the fact that I did that. But you got to take advantage when you're in the company of people like that and slip them a song.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just gonna say, when you get a chance to make a song for Patti LaBelle, that has to be like a once in a lifetime opportunity. I know you've worked with other big artists as well, but I'm just saying she kind of stands out because of
Oh
her.
yeah, she's an amazing talent, vocalist and performer and human being.
Mm. Now, was there only one song that you wrote for Patti LaBelle, or did
Yeah,
you write any
just
others?
one.
Just
Yeah,
one.
I tried to get another song on, but the song called "Let the Best Love Win."
Mm-hmm.
But it's uh, whenever you get the chance to pitch to somebody, you take your best shot. So sometimes, you have a relationship with an artist, or it's a 1 or 2 or 3 degrees of separation away.
Mm-hmm.
It could be anything from their hairstylist to their guitar player to their producer to a direct connection, and or through a publisher. I've gotten several things through publishers as well. I have my own publishing company, but and I co-publish things with um, a lot of different ones. Bobby's main publishing connection was through a company called Abco,
Mm-hmm.
which is started by Alan Klein, who was, well known in the business because he was Sam Cooke's business manager, and uh, and his son took over the company. They have a huge catalog.
Mm-hmm.
They have all of Sam Cooke stuff. They have most of Bobby's stuff. They have um, some of the English acts, the Stones. They own masters and song publishing on some of those. So, and a lot of my stuff is with them, including the last album that Bobby put out, um, which was um, getting a little ahead of myself. That was more recent. It was around 2012. Um, we can jump to that, but
Well,
uh,
well,
in
well,
the
well, excuse me, but before actually we jump to
yeah,
that, there's other artists that you have worked with. I mean, Snoop Doggy Dogg, Rod Stewart. Now that seems like a totally different type of level of songwriting when you go from Rod Stewart to Snoop Dogg. I mean,
well, yeah, well, in the case of Rod Stewart, it was a song that I wrote with Bobby,
mm,
and um, um, Rod Stewart was a fan of Bobby,
mm,
and they were fans of each other, but he kind of borrowed a riff from one of Bobby's songs, um, and to use in his songs, "Do You Think I'm Sexy?" He kind of borrowed a riff from Bobby, and so he felt like he wanted to do something back for Bobby, so they did a duet on a song that Bobby and I wrote. It wasn't, it didn't really become a very famous song because the album, there was a controversy with the album, um, and it kind of got buried. So unfortunately, there's a lot of good songs on that album, and I
but you just said, "Do you think I'm sexy?" That didn't come from Rod Stewart's. If you think I'm sexy, was that one of the main big hits from Rod Stewart?
yeah. Do you think I'm sexy was one of Rod
Oh,
Stewart's.
do you think I'm sexy? Okay,
Right.
okay, okay. But you had nothing to do with that particular song, from what you just stated.
No, I'm just saying that
Mm.
there was a riff in that song that he borrowed from Bobby.
Mm.
Uh, Not the melody of the song, but the kind of an instrumental riff. And so, in addition to being a fan of Bobby's, he wanted to do a little, you know, payback, thank you, uh, to Bobby. So they did a duet
Mm.
on a song that Bobby and I wrote. And like I say, unfortunately, um, no one really knows where the master for that is. There's a whole scandal with that album, but that's another story.
It's a whole other story, right? And then you obviously got into the hip hop era with Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Well,
I mean,
well, the reason I got connected to some of the hip hop songs really came more from sampling or taking the songs themselves. In the case of Snoop, uh, at that time I had not met Snoop yet, but uh, he took the chorus to a song that Bobby and I wrote, was a big R&B hit for Bobby, called "I Wish You Didn't Trust Me So Much,"
mm,
and as a song I wrote with two other gentlemen, and that Bobby I originally put out with my group Gravity. It was Gravity at the time, and now we're Gravity 180.
mm,
And Bobby heard us do the song, and he recorded it. And then Snoop loved the song, was a fan of Bobby's, and he took the chorus to the song and used it exactly the same chorus, and then over the verses put in his own lyrics to it. So I didn't really write with him.
mm.
He didn't sample it. He actually took the chorus to the song and used it exactly like it was originally done, and then wrote his own rap to verses along with a couple other uh, artists that he wrote that to
Hmm.
with.
And then we mentioned Kelly Rowland, so again, that's a big R&B act or a big R&B solo singer now. She used to be part of
Right.
Destiny. Was it just one song that you participated or wrote for
Right.
Kelly Rowland?
Yeah. That was just she. There was a rapper that was on that that was in a group called um, um, Gym Class Heroes,
Mm-hmm.
and he also was the artist on with Bruno Mars on "I Want to Be a Billionaire." Uh, but he did the that was that song. Kelly Rowland's version of "Daylight" featured him, and so it was it was actually got to number 11 or think something on the charts in England, and wasn't it was like a dance on the dance charts here, but it was on the main singles chart in England.
Mm-hmm.
Got I think to number 11, and she's done a lot of work over there and
Mm-hmm.
been on a lot of the shows like The Voice and stuff like that over there.
Right. Now, Harold, you're currently, you say you're part of the group Gravity 180. Now, again, you mentioned earlier during the program Oliver Brown, who was on this show a couple of weeks ago. You kind of had collaborated and met with him. Is your role in this particular group as just a songwriter, or do you do performing with your guitar?
No, we there's just three of us, and we all write and sing. Well, Oliver doesn't do much writing, but he's an amazing performer.
Mm,
Clydeen Jackson is the other member of the group,
mm,
and we met uh, way back in the '70s when I was playing at a place on the Redondo Beach Pier called Tony's on the Pier, where I played for many years,
mm,
and Clydeen was playing across the way at a place called New Tony's, and we'd go watch each other on our breaks. And she was amazing and is an amazing keyboard player and singer. And she had, right before I met her, she had an album that was produced by Ray Charles,
mm,
produced her entire album. And she still sings on almost every major movie that comes out. So she's an extraordinary singer. And Oliver, I met at a restaurant. We were sitting at a restaurant in Marina Del Rey, California, and we were waiting for dinner. And I happened to be my date at the time, and his wife were we were sitting next to each other waiting, and he had this sweater on that was really unique and really cool. I said, "Man, it's a really nice sweater." And he said, "Yeah, I got it in England." I said, "What were you doing over there?" He said, "Well, I was touring with Leo Sayer, who's a big artist, had a bunch of hits, When I Need You, and a couple other ones." And so we started talking about, well, I'm a musician too, and we said, maybe we'll work together sometime. And I met his brother Eddie Brown, who was in a major folk group. There was an incredible group called Joe and Eddie many years ago. And I met Eddie at a publishing company, and um, Clydeen and I were playing in a small club in Gardena, and they didn't want a drummer because it was too loud. So, and we had a percussionist who was going out on tour, and so Oliver's brother brought Oliver down to hear us in this little club, and he'd just come off the road with playing with Leo Sayer and Al Jarreau, and kind of, well, I'll go down there and check it out. And he fell in love with our music and became part of our band. And we're a real close family, the three of us. Um, and my late wife, Susan, was our tour manager and worked with us a lot
mm.
as
So,
well. And
mm,
go ahead.
well, currently, I mean, this group, Gravity 180, is there a particular sound of music that y'all kind of specialize in, or is it kind of open to different types of
Well,
styles?
it's at the time we were formed, it was kind of unique because it's an acoustic guitar,
Mm,
percussion, and keyboards,
mm,
and that's it. And uh, it's kind of pop R&B with a little Latin uh, flavor and a little gospel. It's kind of a mix like that. And we actually were signed to a major Japanese label called Pony Canyon, and did several tours of Japan. So most of the things that we had out, we put out a couple things here as well, but we had several tours and some success in Japan, which was really fun because we did a lot of tours over there. And my late wife was Japanese American,
mm.
so it was really fun to go to Japan.
Well, right now is Gravity 180 working on any new material that you're looking to release as a
Yes,
song or
and
album?
in the beginning it was called Gravity, and the reason we changed it to Gravity 180 because there was another group that, even though we go way back, they went about 6 months before us. So we thought we keep the gravity part of it and just to add the 180
Mm,
to it, because kind of the reverse of gravity, and we're working on an album now, uh, an EP, like a 5 song EP, um, and a couple of songs um, are are remixes and updates of, we're adding a bunch of new instruments to a couple of new songs, one of which is Stevie Wonder's Overjoyed. And I really like it because it's different in that it's a duet. Claudine and I do a lot of duet singing, uh, not so much just straight harmony, but kind of more back and forth kind of stuff.
mm.
So it's kind of a unique version of it. So and sometimes it helps when you're putting out an album to start, if you're not a real famous group, to put out a cover song first, so people kind of uh, get an idea of your sound, and then put out the rest of your original music.
Well, Harold, for
So
people who are not who can't recognize Gravity 180 for whatever particular reason, is there a particular group that you can say your group sounds like or similar to that you can kind of think of offhand, or do you just have your own type of sound that you really can't say has any similarities to particularly any other group?
well, it's just, I mean, I can tell that Claudine's voice is kind of like Patty Austin,
Mm-hmm.
that direction, if you know who Patty
I
Austin
know
is,
Patty also, yes.
and kind of a more sophisticated, soulful sound.
Mm-hmm.
And my voice is a little more like, people often say I sound a lot like Don Henley
Mm-hmm.
from you know, um, and so it's kind of a unique blend, kind of a silk and sandpaper kind of a thing. She's the silk, and I'm the sandpaper.
Well, let
You
me
know,
ask you a question now with Claudine. If I asked
Clyde, yeah,
Yes, if I asked her, could she sing "It Gotta Be Real"? Well, hold on, Patty. That's a different singer. Patty Austin didn't. That
that,
was Cheryl Lynn.
yeah,
Patty
Cheryl Lynn
Austin did the duet with Michael Jackson. So, but she also did a duet with James Ingram too.
Ingram, yeah.
Right, right. So,
Maybe Come to Me.
"Baby Come to
I
Me."
would say, that kind of direction is a little bit of what we do, that kind of pop R&B thing,
Uh,
but with a little more, percussion, kind of a little more Latin and some gospel roots in there. It's hard to, I can tell you what the elements are, but altogether, I can't think of another group that we're close to sounding like. It's a little more on the acoustic side,
yeah.
you know, and it's unique. And for three people, uh, we we have kind of a unique sound. Like I say, especially when we started, there was nobody around that had that configuration of a keyboard. She kind of played some left hand, kind of had a real church left hand. Claudine grew up singing in the church, and uh, and then with Oliver, the way he plays percussion, really unique style, and is such a dynamic performer. And then an acoustic guitar, it was just kind of an unusual, especially a long time ago, it was even more unusual.
And do you still handle most of the songwriting for your material?
Well, Clydeen and I write a lot together, and I do maybe a little bit more, but also Oliver's brother Eddie, who I mentioned earlier, who was in a group called Joe and Eddie,
Mm.
um, and he co-produced some of our stuff along with Niels, who's a smooth jazz artist. Uh, I think Oliver probably mentioned Niels to you. Niels had a song called Pacific Coast Highway that was the contemporary jazz song of the decade, um, and has put out many albums. And Clydeen and Oliver also play with him. I actually introduced them to him. Uh, Niels and I met through an organization called Just Plain Folks. That's kind of a music networking organization.
So Harold, you have to still have this type of love for performing, if you, because you've been in the music industry for a long time, and for you
Yeah.
to still have this drive and energy, that's kind of saying something. I mean, I know you might not be heavily involved working with a lot of other different artists, because you're saying right now the focal point is just mostly with Gravity 180. But what kind of keeps the fire still going inside you to want to be involved in the music industry as a performer for this length of time?
Well, I actually do more solo work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I play a lot of small concerts, and I still play clubs where I
Mm-hmm.
do a mixture of cover songs, my own songs, and improv, where uh, I'll meet somebody in the audience and I'll go up and make up a song about them. And then about 25 years ago, I really started getting into custom songs for special events. So where people would, and I still do a lot of that. There's a lot of high-end meeting planners that hire me to write songs for, like I did Regis Philbin's 80th birthday party, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
a while back. And um, people that own um, financial companies, and the guy that owned the Cheesecake Factory, and like more on the high end side. And it's nice because I get paid well to do that, and it's still songwriting. And I go in and just I I I write and then go in and perform one song for this event, and then I give them copies of the recording, and then I joined the National Speakers Association, and I did some combination things where called keynote concerts, where I would speak and also do songs in between. And that led to me doing a TEDx talk called Preparing for Spontaneity, where I talked about how I learned to improvise
Mm-hmm.
and make songs on the spot, which started from me playing in clubs and taking titles from the audience and making up songs on the spot. And people would send up a napkin and say, "Hey, my cousin is here from Texas, and he's a plumber, and he's married to his wife, who's Julie, who's a massage therapist, and they like to water ski." Okay, and so I just make up a song about it. And so a lot of I've been doing lately is what I call recap improv. So I just was in the Philippines about 5 or 6 months ago, and as part of this organization called Together We Can Change the World, and um, they had several speakers, and after each speaker, I would take notes and go up and make up a song on the spot about what they just spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been doing a fair amount of that lately. It's kind of a very specialized thing, and it's unique. And my the talk that, I don't know if you're familiar with TED Talks or TEDx Talks, but they're where people talk on about a particular subject, and they're pretty well known. And so mine was on called Preparing for Spontaneity, where I talked about how I learned to improvise.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the variety of things that I do is I still play in clubs, I play small concerts, and I do custom songs, and I do improv where I make titles on the spot, and I do recap improv or summary songs where after a speaker goes up, I go make up a song about what they just talked about, or I do a whole event where I'll at two or three times during the event, I'll go up and make up a song about what was just happening before. And I ended up working with this guy named Kyle Cease, and we did two days at the Dolby Theater, doing his thing and me making up songs about it. And so and then that led to me doing a solo show called Under the Radar Over the Moon,
Mm-hmm.
which talks about being happily not famous. You know, the idea for that came from when I was an opening act for a lot of major, where Kenny Loggins and Van Morrison and Air Supply and all these different groups, I would go on as the opening act. And a lot of times they'd be in a tour bus and being with the same people the whole time and maybe going straight from the bus to the stage. And it was like, hello, Austin, I mean, Houston, and almost didn't know where they were. And I would go in the day before and get to know the town and meet people and felt like I was getting a richer experience. So that's where my idea for this one man show called Under the Radar Over the Moon, which I did recently for the Hollywood Fringe Festival, where it's stories, songs, and improv, and so those are all the different sorts of things that I'm doing to keep my fires burning, and I like doing all of it and the variety. You know, playing with Gravity 180, playing solo, doing custom songs, doing improv, doing recap improv, doing my solo show, and it's all inspiring to me and still a lot of fun.
Well, Harold, that sounds like the ending part of this particular show, towards what you're currently doing towards your future plans. And like I say, I mean, you were a real down to earth individual. You came across really pleasant and easygoing. And it was just something, interesting to learn a little bit about your musical background. As we're closing up on this particular segment, I like to ask every particular guest towards the end of the show if there's any last words that you would like for people to know about yourself or what you're looking to do. Feel free to express yourself.
Well, um, like I said at the end of my one man show, I say, that I was able to dance close enough to the spotlight to feel its glow, but not so close to get burned by it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I've navigated the world, being kind of under the radar a little bit, but really happily so, playing for, doing a lot of different things for nice small audiences and enjoying my career and my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Harold, keep up the good work with what you're doing. I mean, you're in some good companies. Oliver Brown, it sounds like to me y'all have a good collaboration. I mean, I haven't met Claudine, is her name?
Clydeen.
Yes, I mean, I haven't met her, but Oliver was really interesting and a down to earth person to interview as well. So you're definitely working with a good collaboration of people. And it was our pleasure to have you as a guest this morning on All About You. And
Thank you very
definitely,
much.
you're welcome. And
My
keep up the good work with what you're doing with Gravity 180 in particular.
and you keep up your great work as well.
Thank
Thank you.
you. It was our pleasure. All right.
Take care.
You too. Okay. All right, this is Jonathan Small. Just enjoyed hosting this edition of the All About You talk show with multi performer, songwriter, performer Harold Payne. Like I mentioned earlier, he's a real down to earth, easygoing person, and he's definitely collaborated with a lot of big name artists as a songwriter over the course of his musical background. And again, it was our pleasure to have Harold Payne as a special guest this morning on All About You talk show. We'll be taking a couple weeks off, be back here towards the end of the year. Look forward to either hosting All About You or a face-to-face talk show. But until I see you again, for people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.